Good evening. And welcome to everyone who's joining us on the internet. We're talking about making the gift of freedom. And last week I shared with you two prayers that I had shared with you earlier. I wish to see the evidence of love, and I wish to be the evidence of love. In order to see the evidence of love, you must be willing to see the evidence of love. But sometimes your brothers or sisters consciously choose to be unlovely. I'll put it that way. They do it out of fear. They do it out of desperation because they have this false experience of being alone, just as all of you do to one degree or another. And the question is, what do you do with a brother who insists on engaging in activities and language that is unloving? Remember, again, in the context of making the gift of freedom, real freedom means to be free of that which binds you. And remember that we're talking about the fact that the expression of self-will, which everyone thinks is the meaning of free will, is what binds you. And so when you come to a brother with the desire to make the gift of freedom, you're coming to that brother to say, freedom means something different from what you believe it is. And at the bottom line, it means that you're going to have to abandon what you have called freedom. You're going to have to abandon what you call freedom. Well, not everyone wants to do that. In fact, at the bottom line, none of you are awake because none of you is willing to abandon the expression of freedom by your definition, which is the right to express self-will. So you are likely to be met not by willing agreement, but you are likely to be met by resistance. So how do you not become discouraged? Well, the easiest way not to be discouraged is not to try to force an understanding of true freedom on someone who is adamantly committed to expressing self-will. It's only when you try to do the impossible that you get frustrated and discouraged, right? Those who are not willing to listen to me in the withinness of themselves do not hear me, even though I am willing to speak, even though I do speak. So you must be willing to back off from those who vehemently refuse to consider that there's another way to look at the meaning of freedom. And there's another way to look at the meaning of free will, which, as we've been discussing, means yielding to the Father's will. Letting the Father's will be your will, which in truth it is. Now, in extreme cases where you are dealing with those who are caught in an ethic of expressing self-will, who see it as the be-all and end-all of existence, and when their behavior is obtuse, unpleasant, hateful, when it expresses jealousy, and they don't want to shut up, they want the freedom to express it endlessly, loudly, to anyone who will listen, you must say no. You must say, you cannot continue this behavior in my presence. And in effect, they become excluded from your company. What that amounts to is an intelligent action of restraint that is being applied to an uncontrolled expression of that which is unlovely. And don't ever think that the Course teaches that there should never be restraint of any kind. That amounts to sheer stupidity. When this happens, and you have to say no, and an apparent exclusion occurs, it's because you have good reason for it. You have intelligent reason for it. You will not participate in, enabling, that which doesn't express the true nature of the one who wants to be hateful or unlovely. So you have a picture of them in your mind regarding an accurate assessment of their current behavior. And you know that until the behavior changes, the restriction must stay in place. Now comes the important part. You've set up the restriction, the exclusion is in place, and you understand why the exclusion is in place. The reason can, in your mind, become a definition you have about that individual. And here's the place where you will make a mistake. Because you can't allow the description of their current behavior to become the definition of them in your own mind. Why? Because the minute it becomes the definition of them in your own mind, you have forgotten who they are. They are not their behavior. None of you are your behavior. but your bad behavior can't continue, why would you make the gift of freedom to your brother? Because you love your brother. Another reason you would give the gift of freedom to your brother is because as you're in the process of waking up, healing becomes your goal. The correction of misunderstanding, the correction of misperception is your goal, because that constitutes healing. You have forgotten who you are, and I am remembering for you. And because I continue to remember what you really are for you, I can share it with you so that you can remember. You're here to remember for your brothers and sisters. And so if you set up a limit on behavior, and if you use the reasons for the limit as a definition of them, you will no longer be able to remember for them who they are, and you will not be able to be an agent for change, and in effect, you and that brother will become locked in a picture. A picture that is not the truth. And you will have gone to sleep a little bit more instead of having woken up a little bit more. And you will not be able to be an agent for change. When a brother or a sister or a parent or a child insists on behaving in ways that are disruptive, harmful, you must set the limit, and then in the quietness of your mind, when they come to your thought, you must take that opportunity to remember for them who they are. You don't confront them with it, but you nevertheless remember consciously. For you to remember what they are is an act of love. To remember the definition you've applied to them is an act of hate. To hold them to the definition you have of them, to hold them to the picture they have presented of themselves, is an act of hate. It is not healing. So remember, you give the gift of freedom because your goal, your intent is to heal. Healing someone doesn't mean controlling them into their good. It means acknowledging what is true about them in your mind so that you are not confused. And in that acknowledgement of what they truly are, you are remembering the Father. You are remembering God, and by remembering God in your mind relative to your brother, you are glorifying God right there, and that is your gift. And you know what? There's never a time to abandon that activity. That doesn't mean you have to sit there 24 hours a day remembering God right there where they are, because there's a whole universe. All of your friends, all of the things in your experience deserve that acknowledgement, because that's how you glorify God. And that's how you make the truth about you yours, because you haven't forgotten to remember who your brother truly is. I can remember who you are, but that won't change you. As I remember who you are, and it filters into your awareness, you have the opportunity and the obligation to extend that recognition on to your brother, and then change occurs for you. That's why there's never a time to abandon your brother, even if you have had to exclude or set limits so that abuse can't occur, and so that the enabling of an abusive attitude doesn't become acceptable, you see. So it's a fine line. Remember, though, that if you're getting discouraged, it's because you're trying to enforce another's good on him. You're trying to enforce another's freedom on him. And that doesn't make sense, does it? How can you enforce freedom on another? You cannot force another to be free. You see? That's control and the absence of freedom for your brother. Remember, your function is to be the evidence of love. And so your very being is healing. And that's the goal, the uncovering of that which is real, right where the unreal seems to be presenting itself. I'm going to back up one sentence from where we left off. By separating your will from mine, you are exempting yourself from the will of God, which is yourself. Yet, to heal is still to make whole. Therefore, to heal is to unite with those who are like you, because perceiving this likeness is to recognize the Father. If your perfection is in Him, the Father, and only in Him, how can you know it without recognizing Him? And I'm going to add, where are you going to recognize Him? In your brothers, in your sisters, in all of creation that's all around you. But you're going to have to be willing to see it there, right where someone is saying, no, I'm not the evidence of God, I'm the bastard, I am proclaiming to you is what's here. I am the unpleasant person you see here. And I will devote myself to convincing you of just how awful I am. You can't dare to believe that one, because then you'll forget who he is, and then you won't make the gift of the truth of him. You won't remember for him, and you won't make your own. You won't make your own my remembering of who you are. And you will lose the blessing of my remembering who you are, because you refuse to remember who your brother is, because you chose to believe the awful picture he or she was presenting. If your perfection is in him, the Father, and only in him, how can you know it without recognizing him? The recognition of God is the recognition of yourself. You see how useless it is to go off into the ethers or go up into a mountain all by yourself and look for God? You need a brother next to you. You need a tree next to you. You could find that on a high mountain. But the point is, you can't look away from everything you're experiencing into the vast unknown to find God. You've got to look right in front of your eyes. The recognition of God is the recognition of yourself. That's when you get to keep your gift. And that's when you become the embodiment of what you truly are. Continuing, there is no separation of God and his creation. That means the word "and" there is inappropriate, because there isn't God and his creation. There is God being all there is. You will learn this as you learn that there is no separation of your will and mine. You see, free will has been thought to be an expression of will that is independent and different from every other one's expression of free will. That's not true. That is a definition of self-will. And that's why awakening occurs so slowly, because each of you is so reluctant to give up your right to an independent expression of will, and because it is humiliating to this ego definition of yourself to think that real will, your real will, is shared by all equally, because it isn't yours, it's derived from your source, God the Father. Let the love of God shine upon you by your acceptance of me. By letting me in as a brother, really as a brother. And not trying to be different from me, and not trying to see me as different from you, so that the simple love of our brotherhood might surge and grow and become paramount, more important to you than your so-called independence. My reality is yours and his, meaning the Father's. By joining your will with mine, you are signifying your awareness that the will of God is one. Now, How could we arrive at that? By joining your will with mine, you are signifying your awareness that the will of God is one. Well, by joining with me and abandoning your attempts to be independent, self-willed, self-authorized, you break the sense of isolation which has been binding you and which has been utterly false, unreal, pure fantasy. And you have the experience of truly not being alone. In that experience of, for lack of better words, family, of belonging together, you're acknowledging our brotherhood, and therefore the fact that we have a common parent. Or, if you wish, common parents, Father, Mother, God. And now, God and you and me are joined in one experience, as one experience. And so, by joining your will with mine, you are signifying your awareness that the will of God is one, not divided up. God's oneness and ours are not separate because His oneness encompasses ours. To join with me is to restore His power to you because we are sharing it. You see, sharing is the one thing that egos don't do. They stand apart from each other, and they barter with each other, and they manipulate each other into behaving in a way that fits whatever the current definition of good is. And of course, the word good means what's good for me. What's good for us would involve a sharing attitude, wouldn't it? An involved attitude. To join with me is to restore His power to you because we are sharing it. I offer you only the recognition of His power in you. See? By remembering who you are. By remembering that you are our Father's son or daughter. I am recognizing His power in you. I offer you only the recognition of His power in you, but in that lies all truth. So you get a lot more than what you would expect by letting me in. And your brother gets a lot more than just your gift when your brother lets you in. It's a family reunion. The whole family is received. The whole family becomes yours. All of the brotherhood becomes available to you. And you see how you fit in. And you see that you belong. And you see that you're not alone, and therefore you're not vulnerable. And in the relief and peace that you experience, you abandon your desire to express what you've called free will, which has meant self-will. And then, as I've said before, you don't continue to have this experience of fitting in. You have the experience of the recognition that all of God's creation is the wholeness of you. And the experience of all of creation and of the brotherhood of man becomes the infinite wholeness of you. And the experience constitutes a completing of your wholeness in your conscious awareness. And what? The movement of creation, the movement of God, becomes the uninterrupted and undistorted and integrated conscious experience of your being. And we have a singularity in which you haven't been swallowed up, but in which you can relate to all of creation intimately, beautifully, lovingly.